Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Will, who's been supporting this channel as a Golden Pig tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Will, so again, Will, thank you so much. And for the personalized deck tag, Will chose Esika, God of the Tree, with a theme of God Tribal. Esika is an MDFC 5-color god. She's a 1/4 Vigilant God that costs 1 green. She has tap, add 1 mana of any color, and other legendary creatures you control have Vigilance, and tap, add 1 mana of any color. And then on the backside of this card is the Prismatic Bridge, which is a legendary enchantment for Wooburg. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards in the top of your library until you reveal a creature or planeswalker card, put that card onto the battlefield, and the rest of them bomb your library in a random order. Esika is an incredibly powerful commander with a lot of versatility. But with a God Tribal deck, for the most part, we're going to focus on the backside of this card. Gods can be quite expensive, so we can only include so many in a budget deck such as this one, but the Prismatic Bridge is fantastic at getting those gods out. So we're going to limit the number of creatures in this deck outside of our gods to make sure that we get gods out consistently. And of course, we're going to have plenty of things like anthems to make those gods even more powerful. So first, let's start by talking about some gods like Karametra, God of Harvest, and Erebos, Blackhearted. Each of these are the Theros block-style gods that are indestructible enchantments that can be really hard to deal with. Karametra, God of Harvest is a 6/7 god with indestructible that costs 3 green/white. As long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature. But whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. So once Karametra is online, she can already hit hard as a 6/7 with indestructible. But again, with just a few anthems, she can become even deadlier. And then Erebos Blackhearted is a 5/6 indestructible god for 3 and a black. It has as long as your devotion to black is less than 5, Erebos isn't a creature. Whenever another creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card, and pay 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature. Target creature gets -2/-1 until end of turn. So Erebos can also be a heavy hitter for a low mana cost when it's online. On top of that, if any of our creatures do die, we can still benefit from that creature dying. Simply by paying 2 life, we get to draw a card. And even when some of our gods do die, they come right back to us, like the Locust God and the Scorpion God. These old gods of Amonkhet come back to us even after death. The Locust God is a 4/4 god with flying that costs 4 blue/red. It says whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. And we can also pay 2 blue/red to draw a card, then discard a card. On top of that, when the Locust God dies, return to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So again, these gods are relentless. Even when someone kills them, they're gonna be coming back. And the Scorpion God is a 6/5 god that costs 3 black/red. It says whenever a creature with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, draw a card. And by paying 1 black/red, we put a -1/-1 counter on another target creature. And of course, it has that exact same text that the Locust God does, coming back to our hand when it dies. So this can shrink our opponent's creatures, take out their small ones, and draw some cards in the process. Next up, we've got some other Amonkhet gods that have some different conditions to activate, like Kefnet the Mindful and Hazoret the Fervent. Kefnet is a 5/5 god with flying and indestructible that costs 2 and a blue. It can't attack or block unless you have 7 or more cards in hand. And by paying 3 and a blue, you draw a card, then you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. So Kefnet can actually help activate itself. And of course, we've got plenty of other ways in this deck to draw cards. And once Kefnet is online, a 5/5 flying indestructible god for just 3 mana is huge. And again, with things like our anthems, we're going to be making this even more deadly. And then there's Hazoret the Fervent, a 5/4 indestructible hasty god that costs 3 and a red. It can't attack or block unless we've got 1 or fewer cards in hand. And by paying 2 and a red, we discard a card, and then Hazoret deals 2 damage to each opponent. So Hazoret can help ping opponents down when they're low on life and actually get itself closer to activation as well. But now let's move on to the new gods, those MDFC gods from Kaldheim, starting off with Kolvari, God of Kinship. Kolvari is a 2/4 Gon that costs 2 green. She has as long as you control 3 or more legendary creatures, Kolvari gets +4/+2 and has Vigilance. And by paying 1 and a green, you can tap her and look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a legendary creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So Kolvari gets stronger once we hit a threshold of legendary creatures. And again, with the Prismatic Bridge, it's not going to be hard for us to get those Gons out. So Kolvari is going to be a 6/6 Gon with Vigilance that can also provide us card advantage. On the backside, we've got the Ringheart Crest, which is a legendary artifact for 1 and a green. It says, as it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, so we're going to choose God. And then it can tap to add green, but we spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type or a legendary creature spell. So if we need to, we can cast Kolvari early to help us ramp and cast more Gons. But next up, let's move on to Berkey, God of Storytelling. She's a 3/3 Gon for 2 and a red, and she has whenever you cast a spell, add red. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Also, creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once, but that's really not all that relevant for this deck. Berkey is essentially a ritual for all of our spells, so she can help us produce a lot of mana throughout the game and help us cast spell after spell during a turn. On the backside, we've got Harnfell, Horn of Bounty, which is a legendary artifact for 4 and a red. It says discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. So if we need to utilize this God for card advantage, we can cast the backside instead. Getting rid of just 1 card in our hand to get 2 cards of temporary card advantage can be huge. But next up, let's move on to Allrun, God of the Cosmos. Allrun starts off as just a 1/1 Gon for 3 blue. But Allrun is going to get +1/+1 for each card in your hand and each foretold card you own in exile. So again, Allrun can get up to an 8/8 or even higher. And then at the beginning of your end step, choose a card type, then reveal the top 2 cards of your library, put all cards of the chosen type in your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So this god can be a heavy hitter that can also provide us card advantage. And then on the backside, we've got Haka, Whispering Raven, a 2/3 bird with flying that costs 1 and a blue. When it deals combat damage to a player, we return it to its owner's hand, then we scry 2. So we can get this down early, hit a player, and get some card advantage. Next up, let's move on to another blue MDFC God with Cosima, God of the Voyage. Cosima is a 2/4 God that costs 2 and a blue. She says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile Cosima. If you do, it gains. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if Cosima is exiled, you may put a Voyage counter on it. If you don't, return Cosima to the battlefield with X++1 counters on it and draw X cards, where X is the number of Voyage counters on it. So Cosima basically goes on a little voyage. When she does that, we basically have a delayed landfall draw effect that also makes her huge. And then on the backside, we've got the legendary vehicle, the Omen Keel. It's a 3/3 vehicle for 1 and a blue that says, whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles that many cards from the top of their library. You may play lands from among those cards as long as they remain exiled. So if we need to get some lands, we can really utilize this vehicle instead. But now let's move on to Redain, God of the Worthy. Redain is a 2/3 God with flying and vigilance that costs 2 and a white. She has snow lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and non-creature spells your opponents cast with converted mana cost 4 or greater cost 2 more to cast. So if one of your opponents is playing a deck with snow lands, this can really slow them down. On top of that, she also has a huge taxing effect for big non-creature spells. And then on the backside, we've got Valkmira, Protector Shield. This is a legendary artifact for 3 and a white that says if a source an opponent controls would deal damage to you or a permanent you control, prevent 1 of that damage. And then whenever you or another permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless its controller pays 1. So on top of taxing targeting effects, this can also help save us from some damage. And finally, we're also going to be running Egon, God of Death. Egon is a 6/6 God with Death Touch that costs 2 and a black. At the beginning of our upkeep, we have to exile 2 cards from our graveyard, and if we can't, we sacrifice Egon and draw a card. So this is a heavy hitter for not a lot of mana. It does have that upkeep requirement though, so we will need some cards in our graveyard. But even when we can't meet that requirement, Egon replaces itself when it sacrifices and draws us a card. And then on the backside, we've got Throne of Death, a legendary artifact for black. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card, and by paying 2 and a black and tapping it, we exile a creature card from our graveyard to draw a card. So this can help provide us with some card advantage in certain situations. But now let's talk about some of the anthems in this deck, starting with things like Rally the Ranks, Dictative Heliod, and Collective Blessing. Anthems like these can help make our gods even deadlier. When Rally the Ranks comes into play, we're going to choose gods, and then gods we control get +1/+1. And then Dictative Heliod has Flash, and it says creatures you control get +2/+2. So this can be an effective combat trick that can really help us pump our creatures. But Collective Blessing is an enchantment that can pump our creatures even further, giving them all +3/+3. Now, as effective as these are, there's still one card that stands above the rest, and that would be the golden pig of this deck, which is the #1 card out of our 99, and that would be Hero's Podium. Hero's Podium is a legendary artifact that costs 5, and it says each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other legendary creature you control. And by paying X and tapping it, we look at the top X cards of our library, we can reveal a legendary creature card from among them and put it into our hand, and the rest go on the bottom of our library in a random order. So this can pump our legendary creatures to an absurd amount. The more legendary creatures that we have in play, the more powerful they all become. And on top of that, this can actually get us some of our legendary creatures off the top of our library as well. So yeah, a huge Anthem effect and potential card advantage. This card is pretty fantastic in this deck. Next up, let's talk about some high value cards in this deck, starting off with Urza's Ruinous Blast. It's a legendary sorcery for 4 and a white, and it says exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. This can wipe out pretty much anything while still keeping our gods on the board. So this can decimate our opponent's boards and put us ahead. And then we're going to be running another legendary sorcery with Kamal's Druidic Vow. For X green, we look at the top X cards of our library, and then we can put any number of land and or legendary permanent cards with converted mana cost extra less among them onto the battlefield, put the rest into our graveyard. So this can ramp us a ton and get us legendaries off the top into play for free. Now, outside of our gods, we're just going to be running 3 legendary creatures, but each of them can help our gods out. Wrath Capuchin is a 3/3 human wizard for 2 white blue that has flash and flying. He also has you may cast historic spells as though they had flash. So any of our artifacts or legendaries, we can cast at instant speed. And then Arvad the Curse is a 3/3 vampire knight with death touch and lifelink that costs 3 white black. He has other legendary creatures you control get +2/+2. So he can be very deadly with a couple of anthems out, and he's also a giant anthem for our other legendaries. And finally there's Sisay Weatherlight Captain, which is a 2/2 human soldier for 2 and a white. She's going to get +1/+1 for each other color among other legendary permanents we control. And with a Prismatic Bridge in play, that's already going to be +5/+5. Then by paying Wooburg, we search our library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle our library. So for this deck's purposes, she's basically a 7/7 that can go get our other gods and other legendary things. Yeah, that's pretty fantastic. If you're looking to play this deck, consider joining the amazing PlayEDH Discord. It's a great way to play Commander over webcam. In the description below, you'll find their Discord invite link, as well as the tier that this deck has been approved at next to the deck list. So if you want to pick it up and play it as is, you can, and be sure to read their welcome information for more details. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.